Kimbo Slice, also known as Kevin Ferguson, was homeless years ago. He was living in a green 1987 Pathfinder with 4 mismatched tires. To keep the rain out, he taped plastic bags to the cracked window. He took baths in the ocean and pools and used the restroom whenever he could. He was too proud to live with his mother, but not too proud to wash strangers' vehicles when he was rejected for menial employment. And his mind, the one that stunned the CBS executives attempting to turn him into an MMA star, convincing them to contract him for MMA's network premiere on May 31st, drowned in humiliation. It wasn't always like this. Ferguson had been a middle linebacker at Miami's Palmetto High School 2 years previously, in 1992, with the ability to think college ball. But then, Hurricane Andrew hit South Florida, destroying Ferguson's house and hopes. Palmetto's season was cut short, and Ferguson's scholarships were revoked. He attempted college at Bethune-Cookman but failed. He was out on the streets by early 1994. And just thinking about living and dying in the stink of that stupid truck makes the 6'2", 240-pound, 34-year-old badass cry to this day. For all the fist-fighting Ferguson Slice has done in the alleys of Miami's darkest corners and now in front of shining lights, that homeless month represents the most scared he has ever been, which is saying something. This is a man, mind you, who still wears the scars from Hurricane Andrew on his body, like slashes on a gladiator's shield. He hid under a mattress that night as debris pelted him and his mother's home crumbled. But at least he had a mattress then, and no 6 kids and their 2 moms to feed or fail. While in that truck, Ferguson talked to himself and to God and asked both to please keep him from temptation and deliver him from evil. He found work as a limo driver, a strip club bouncer, a bodyguard for a porn company, whatever he had to do until he could move from back seat to cheap apartment. It would have been the easiest thing to harm someone and take their money. It was just about the world's hardest thing not to. Violence was not the solution. No, not yet. Of course, it would subsequently be his rescue, and America's passion for it would be greater than his own. He has always attempted to be honorable in his administration. Kimbo's street reputation makes Allen Iverson look like a Tibetan monk, yet it's based on morals. Friends say he has never been a bully, but he likes little else more than fighting them. His first videotaped street fight, a 2003 scrap that traveled from a Miami backyard to the world, the one in which he dropped his fists and kept advancing after letting the sculpted beast across from him take shots at his face. The one that earned him $3,000 for a knockout was against a dude who'd been terrorizing the neighborhood with crime and fear. Ferguson himself has never been arrested for a violent act. His one blotter incident came in 2002 when he was charged with carrying a concealed weapon in an open container. The weapons charge was dropped. A buddy put the fight up on a porn site and immediately got 2 million hits, which handed Ferguson a new kind of famous with the YouTube generation. And with those clicks, Kevin Ferguson began his transformation into Kimbo Slice, merging the Kimbo he'd been called since he was a kid in the Bahamas with the Slice tag that internet fans had slapped on him, and Kimbo had deemed appropriately badass. Kimbo fought mano a mano to put himself to the test and to generate money. The brawls drew spectators and betting, and Kimbo put up as much as $5,000 for any taker who could match his investment and beat him. His mother did not agree, but he went to one of the bouts anyway and ended up screaming the entire time. Terrified, she remembers feeling. She did, however, appear in a CBS Mother's Day commercial with Kimbo earlier this month. There was no packing back then. The surrounding communities simply brought their worst and bravest to the fight, which was arranged by what Kimbo refers to as the Don Kings of the Street. Many of the fights have been uploaded to YouTube. The rules were simple. No grappling, only striking, and officiating by the masses. He fought clinically, without anger or fear. An internship on the way to a profession. Emotions just got in the way of the science of penetrating another man's psyche and defense. Kimbo has rage roiling within, and he'll admit that fighting feels like a cathartic and sexual release. But in those conversations with himself and with God in that Pathfinder, he decided he could not unleash that rage upon the helpless just to help himself. There was honor, nobility, and money in beating up consenting adults. There would have been only money in mugging an old person. To hurt someone vulnerable, I just couldn't do it like that, he says. You want to be a good father and productive citizen. I could have been on the cover of the newspaper as a killer. I had to fight with myself not to hurt people, some serious mental wars. But who would have raised my boys? They would have grown up knowing their dad died another violent death. They would have been angry, and now, instead of one person dying a violent death, you've got two other little protégés who would have grown up just as violent and vicious, causing even more harm to people. I couldn't have that. I've got to be a guide to my kids. Nobody else is going to do it. Not what you expected, right? Bald, bearded, gold teeth, inked-up muscles on top of muscles. Feared because he does not seem to fear. And popular and profitable because everything about him, from his rise to his look to his aura to our infatuation to those fists with knuckles in all the wrong places, is scary. But if you can get past that, there's a conscience, a blueprint, and a loving father. That's not the easiest thing to believe, especially when Kimbo feeds the myth-making machine a morsel at a time. He says he can see souls tremble and dreams of tearing off a man's arm and beating him with it. Those crude videos of his barbaric fights speak for themselves, tapping into our fear and love of violence. So raw, so real, and so unlike anything else in the commercialization of sports. Those videos traveled broadband around the globe like a whispered secret, seeming to say ugly things about him and us, a voyeuristic peek into a frightening world. They do so much of his marketing for him, because fear is good for business in the cage, as long as the paying public has that fear and Kimbo doesn't. And while America might be ready to elect a black president, it'll be a long time before it is unafraid of a giant and violent black man intent on harm and seemingly impervious to it. As with all marketing, appearances are crucial. It's hard to imagine Kimbo's having this aura if his story were exactly the same, but he was white and clean-shaven. Who would he be then? Tank Abbott? Butterbean? Hulk Hogan? With only 2 official pro MMA wins, would he have TV commercials on CBS as the newest face of a sport? Very little about this tale is uncomplicated. The American dream is not something you typically find wrapped in violence and sex, and you hardly expect a man to find God amid fistfights and pornography. But Kimbo Slice's ride, as turbulent as life in America, takes a lot of unexpected turns and arrives in some pretty dark places. What was the model of his truck? A Pathfinder? Kimbo prayed and believed at the depths of his despair, but he didn't immediately get answers or peace or find anything that felt like a path. All he immediately got was his truck repossessed. Kimbo's manager, a 32-year-old white friend Kimbo met in high school, is sitting in the Miami boardroom of Reality Kings, an adult entertainment company. There is a blowfish in the aquarium, a closet full of women's high-heel shoes, and a framed Kimbo poster on the wall. In it, Kimbo is surrounded by bikini-clad women while wearing a fedora and holding a pimp's cane. As always, Kimbo looks bad. Bad meaning bad, or bad meaning good. That depends on your judgments, or lack thereof. The poster is a piece of art on the wall at Reality Kings. Really, we are all a little naked, and the kings of our own reality, so the A in MMA is always in the eye of the beholder. Depending on your biases, the sport can be viewed as a technical science honing the skills of our toughest gladiators, or as another deviant path toward the apocalypse. Regardless, Kimbo's manager, who won't talk unless he's called Icy Mike instead of his real name, doesn't want to be portrayed as a mastermind, because this wasn't planned. He hired Kimbo out of the strip club because he needed a limo driver in the late 1990s. But Icy Mike discovered Kimbo's skills quite by accident. Seems every time a guy did something inappropriate with the girls in a VIP room, that guy ended up with Icy Mike's limo driver standing over him. Icy Mike's lovable little mom, Susan, now runs Kimbo's fan club and can show you inspirational letters from Britain, Poland, and Iraq, from grandmas who want autographs for their grandsons, and from kids who've done elementary school projects on Kimbo. Susan is one of the few people who reprimand Kimbo and get a bowed head. Believe it or not, Kimbo says Icy Mike cares about him so much that he works for free. Funny, you don't expect to walk into a porn company and leave with a love story. But there are haters, too. MMA elitists treat Kimbo like a circus act. They hate that he is representing their sport on Jimmy Kimmel. Hate that he's guaranteed 6 figures per bout like only the world's top fighters. Hate that he's on magazine covers and that George Carl motivates his nuggets with footage of Kimbo. More and more people are resenting him and his success, Icy Mike says. UFC President Dana White says Kimbo wouldn't last 2 minutes in the octagon. Tito Ortiz reduces that to seconds. And former UFC heavyweight champ Rico Rodriguez told a radio station, Kimbo is a tomato can. What has he done to prove himself? He hasn't fought anybody. He's a nobody. Kimbo Slice is just a clown. And maybe Kimbo is just aura, hype, and balls. But this is true too. For his fight against a washed-up Abbott, 1-7 in his previous bouts on February 16th, Kimbo sold out Miami U's basketball arena. Rodriguez was relegated to the undercard, where fans booed because his technical fight was a bore. Truth is, a star and some buzz are good for any sport. MMA should welcome Kimbo's charisma, personality, and ability to attract the uninitiated. The Kimbo circus brings more people into the tent looking for carnage instead of science. Kimbo's network fight is against a 6'5", 270-pound crazy guy named James the Colossus Thompson. But the Colossus has no chin, and once lost to Butterbean in less than a minute. The myth will grow the moment a national TV audience sees the cool internet legend slay another giant. Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here? Besides, Kimbo's and MMA's stories are exactly the same. Up from the gutter, secretly popular, misunderstood, violent, criticized, dangerous, fun, cool, bloody, viral, and now, finally, mainstream. Think about all the sports and leagues that aren't as popular in the U.S. despite huge financial backing. Soccer, the WNBA, maybe even the NHL. MMA popped up because we demanded it, stepping over protests and outrage. It mixes football's violence with pro wrestling's entertainment and more sciences than boxing. Kimbo combines Mike Tyson's mystique and Mr. T's personality. That combination already landed one movie role for Kimbo as a shiv-wielding bad guy in Blood and Bone, which is awaiting release. I consider myself an up-and-coming, intelligent black businessman, Kimbo says. Can he keep winning? Who knows? His ground game hasn't been tested, but he's been working for nearly a year in L.A., where he stays with Icy Mike, with legendary trainer Bass Rutten, a 5th-degree black belt in karate. Kimbo's a freak with strength, Rutten says. I wish all my fighters were like him. He has more tools than people think. And Kimbo has already beaten back 3 doubters with both bloody fists. Here's what Ray Mercer, owner of the hardest punch Lennox Lewis claims he ever felt, said before fighting Kimbo in the first MMA event for each. The quality of guys he is fighting? They're bums. I'm former heavyweight champion of the world. Kimbo needed 72 seconds to choke out Mercer. The fight was Mercer's final MMA attempt. Here's what MMA veteran Bo Cantrell said before facing Kimbo. I've been fighting for 5 years, tough cats. I don't make a living beating up little kids on YouTube. There's a big difference between being hit by someone who's trained to fight and someone off the street thinking they're tough. People pay me, train me well. I throw combinations, kicks, roundhouses. I'm not some guy trying to do his best Chuck Norris impersonation.